It was already after midnight by the time I got back from the tech seminar in Austin. The highway shimmered under the sodium lamps, but the inside of my chest felt heavier than the road beneath me. Kelly didn't bother to wait up, and I didn't expect her to. After 12 years of marriage, I knew our patterns well, or at least I thought I did. The house smelled faintly of lavender detergent and something else, not quite familiar. I tossed my overnight bag on the floor, loosened my tie, and figured I'd dump my travel clothes in the wash before crawling into bed. That was when I saw it. A black athletic t-shirt with a distinct turquoise logo I'd never seen before. The back read Sierra Point Athletics. I frowned. We didn't belong to any gym by that name. It wasn't mine. It wasn't hers. But it had gone through our wash. There was something about it that ticked in the back of my skull like a misaligned gear. I tossed it aside and went to bed, pretending to sleep, even as the gears inside me turned all night. The next morning, I waited until Kelly was in the shower before I slid her phone off the dresser. She never changed the passcode, same one she used since college. I navigated to the Uber app, pretending like I was just checking for a ride estimate. But what I found yanked the ground from under me. Last Thursday, at exactly 6:42 p.m., she'd taken a ride to a residential building 2 neighborhoods over. That same night, she told me she was at St. Joseph's with her mother. Hospital visits don't typically end in high-end condos. My hand trembled slightly, and I caught myself before I dropped the phone. I said nothing. Not yet. I watched her that day, every gesture, every blink, every careful smile, and each felt rehearsed. That evening, as we cleaned up after dinner, she sat on the couch, scrolling through her Google Photos. I noticed the slight flinch in her wrist when I passed behind her. She clicked a folder, and I could almost see the tension in her fingers as she hovered over photos and hit delete. But what she didn't realize, or maybe forgot, was that her backup settings had auto-sync turned on. I logged into the desktop later that night, heart pounding like a hummingbird's wings. She was in a hotel room, not once, 3 times. Same room, same cheap wine bottle on the table, and a man, not fully in the frame. He was smart enough to stay in the blur, but his presence was obvious. The way her body angled, the way she smiled. It was the kind of smile she hadn't given me in years. I couldn't stop. I had to know more. A week later, I drove to the hotel, parked out of sight, and walked the perimeter like I was looking for a dropped wallet. In the far side of the lot, tucked into a corner space, sat a gray Nissan with the Sierra Point Athletics sticker on the rear glass. I took a picture of the license plate. Later that night, I paid a contact for access to a national VIN lookup. The car belonged to a Davis K, a personal trainer. From there, the rage didn't come in a flood. It came in a calm, methodical drip. I booked a trial session with Sierra Point. I used a fake last name, claimed I worked remote and needed to get back in shape. Davis was assigned to me. At first, he played it cool, but in the locker room, among the sound of clinking lockers and steam, I heard it, him laughing to a colleague. "I didn't just steal a client," he joked. "I stole some IT guy's wife." He didn't know the IT guy was standing 10 feet away, pretending to tie his shoes. When I returned home that evening, Kelly was asleep. I went into the closet and scanned the shelves. Behind a stack of winter scarves, I found a small lockbox. No lock. Inside, tucked neatly beside an old engagement photo, was a passport. New, issued under her maiden name. I stared at it for a full minute before setting it back. Later that night, when the entire house slept, I connected her laptop to my flash drive scanner. Buried deep in her drive, behind a folder labeled Q1 Reports, I found a zip archive. Encrypted. Password protected. I cracked it in under an hour. She used her birthday, like always. Inside, a full thread of messages and documents. House listings in Vancouver. Flight bookings for later that summer. Messages between her and Davis talking about leaving everything behind and starting over. She'd been planning this for 6 months. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark and listened to the rhythmic hum of our fridge and wondered how many lies were still hidden in the crevices of this house. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye like she always did. Light, routine, and left for work. I made a different choice. I drove downtown and met with a real estate agent I knew from college. Told him I needed to rent a unit next to my own house. Gave him a fake name, paid 6 months up front. Within a week, I had a new set of keys and the best seat in the house. From the other side of a shared ventilation shaft, I had a perfect view of our bedroom. I placed a pinhole camera in a vase she always insisted on keeping near the full-length mirror. Reflections gave me everything. I became a ghost in my own life. Silent, methodical, invisible. I took a night shift job in the building where Kelly worked, posing as an entry-level security contractor. Nobody questioned it. Her admin was easy to charm. She liked my quiet but reliable vibe. I gained full access to the digital building log within 3 days. I watched. I learned. And what I saw would make anyone's blood run cold. Time distorted into something strange during that second phase. My days revolved around two parallel lives: the shell of a marriage I maintained with Kelly, and the growing web of surveillance that fed my real purpose. Each morning I left through the front door like any working husband, kissed her goodbye, and circled around to enter the adjacent unit through the back. I lived behind her life like a man watching the movie he unknowingly starred in. My nights as a part-time security guard gave me cover, and with the access I'd gained to her office building systems, the walls around her secrets began to crumble faster. The building logs were gold. Davis had entered her office tower past 9 p.m. on 5 separate occasions in the last 2 months. Always on evenings she claimed to be working late, buried under proposals or investor decks. On one of those nights, I requested access to the raw elevator shaft footage. It took some persuasion and a favor called in to an old IT friend, but when I finally had the footage, I felt my stomach drop. There they were, Kelly and Davis, not in a rush, not nervous, comfortable, intimate. She handed him a flash drive. He kissed her cheek before stepping off on a lower floor. I zoomed in, paused, replayed. There was no mistaking the look between them. This wasn't just an affair. This was an alliance, a plan. I tracked Davis through his fitness clients, his sessions, and finally through a fake ad I posted online. Vintage road bike, barely used, $120. I listed it with a garage address that I controlled. Davis messaged within 2 hours, eager to come see it. When he showed up, I had audio monitoring built into the garage's structure. An old hobby project I never thought I'd need. I played it casual, told him I had to grab something from inside, left the recorder running, and asked him about what he did for a living. He bragged more than I expected. Mentioned a woman helping him move money discreetly. I pressed, acting impressed. He laughed. Man, she's brilliant. Already got $70,000 pulled from one of her accounts. No trace. We're planning a clean exit. Canada, maybe. She's working on getting her husband's signature on some tax paperwork soon, too. That was it. That was the thread I needed. I printed out every transaction from Kelly's personal account. She thought she was slick, transferring $1,500 at a time to a shell company Davis created under the name Core Wellness Logistics. But paper doesn't lie. I boxed the bank statements with a printed screenshot of the flash drive handoff and addressed it to her father. I included a USB with copies of all footage and images. The next morning, Kelly's mood shifted. Her family stopped answering her calls. She brushed it off, but I watched her retreat into her phone like she was searching for something that would make the pieces fall back together. By then, I had already taken another step. I launched a small freelance business under an alias, something generic, Bridgepoint Dev Consulting. On the biggest freelancing site, I posted a gig that matched Kelly's exact expertise, seeking startup co-founder with marketing experience for stealth product. I structured the job to sound like a dream opportunity. Within 3 days, she applied using her real credentials. Through her proposals and emails, I discovered she planned to dissolve our joint startup behind my back, replacing it with a legally new entity, fresh branding, new investors. She'd forged ahead using contacts we both built over years, acting like I was just a stepping stone she needed to pass over. She wrote in one email, "We're nearly clear. Once I move the last investor conversation over to the new structure, I can phase out Liam quietly. The rest will follow naturally." Naturally. She didn't know I was reading every packet of data coming through her laptop. I'd connected a VPN analyzer to our home router and logged everything, capturing messages, shared files, even scheduling docs. I found emails to 3 separate investors, men I'd pitched to personally. She promised them full control of the new direction and even included a revised deck with only her name on it. The final betrayal hit me in a strange place, her office safe. Late one night, I climbed the fire escape of her building. I knew the cleaning schedule by heart, and I had a 5-minute window. The lock on her office door wasn't hard. We once bought the same kind for the kids' art room. Inside the safe, beneath outdated tax folders, I found the seal to our company, and next to it, a notarized power of attorney document with my name on it, already signed by her. She intended to fake my consent. I didn't feel rage. I felt ready. The next day, I contacted a crisis auditor I'd worked with before, a sharp, cold professional who specialized in asset protection during internal fraud. I sent her the full package. Within a week, she'd filed motions with the court and financial institutions, freezing the startup's primary account, suspending its transactions, and notifying the state registrar of possible identity fraud involving my name. Kelly's reaction was almost cinematic. I watched from my shadow apartment as she got the notification. First confusion, then panic. She opened her laptop, tapped frantically, tried to access the accounts, denied. Tried again, denied. She slammed the screen shut, paced the room like a caged animal. She made one last move. She walked into a downtown branch of our corporate bank, trying to speak to a manager to resolve the glitch. She didn't know I was already there, sitting in the waiting area with my lawyer and a court officer. When she walked in, her expression changed like glass cracking under heat. She tried to fake calm, tried to smile, but then my lawyer stood and handed her the court-issued freeze notice in front of the stunned bank staff. She tried to speak, but I turned away. There was nothing left to say. Later that night, I went back to the storage warehouse I'd rented and collected a stack of redirected packages, all addressed to her new company. Through a contact in the logistics industry, I'd set up a routing override. Every parcel meant for her name or business alias was now mine to intercept. I opened the first one. Inside was a bulk order of branded notebooks, embossed with her new logo. Marrow. Appropriate. She wanted to suck the marrow from everything we'd built and carry it into her new life. But now all she held were the empty bones of a plan dismantled. Still, I knew the game wasn't over. She was cornered, but not done. The worst of it was still coming. The silence at home was no longer just awkward. It felt like pressure closing in from all sides. Kelly went through her routines as if nothing was unraveling beneath her. But I saw it. The fake smiles. The locked jaw when her phone didn't light up with replies. Her hands trembled when she thought no one was watching. The lies she once carried so gracefully now dragged behind her like chains. And I knew it was time to sever the last ones. She still thought I was clueless. The same predictable husband she'd been quietly building an exit from. But I was already ahead, watching it all unfold from the apartment next door and from her devices, siphoning every plan she tried to breathe into life. I took it further. I created a new freelance company using a generic-sounding name and mirrored the kind of work her startup handled. I seeded the listing carefully. She couldn't resist applying. Through her eager replies, I uncovered how she planned to abandon our shared company, even as our clients and investors still believed we were building something together. She wrote about dissolving it quietly and phasing me out, like I was a defective product she'd outgrown. She didn't know I was watching her screen in real time, every message mirrored to a folder on my system. I had set up a network analyzer through the home router weeks earlier. Everything she sent, pitches, NDAs, financials, passed through me. Then I discovered her final play. Tucked inside a hidden cloud folder labeled Personal Red, I found recordings and documents confirming her plan to leave for Canada. Victoria, to be exact. She was buying a house, a small place by the coast, quiet enough for 2 and a dog. The sale was nearly complete, so I bought the house. Through one of my aliases, I contacted the seller, offered cash, and positioned myself as a reclusive engineer relocating for solitude. They accepted within hours. Kelly never knew, But her escape plan had already been sold out from under her. Still, she didn't stop. One night, while I watched from the camera in the flower vase, she opened our safe and pulled out the documents. She expected to find our company seal, the power of attorney she planned to misuse, and the last pieces she needed to claim full control. Instead, she found an injunction and a typed note. "How does it feel to be the last one to know?" She broke, threw the papers, screamed into her palms, and sank to the carpet like a puppet with cut strings. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt finality. Over the next few days, I saw her try everything. She called old contacts, sent frantic emails. She even tried logging into our company accounts again. But each time, the system locked her out. She walked into a local bank branch, hoping to fix the glitch. She didn't know I was already there, sitting with a lawyer, a court officer, and a sealed folder. The branch manager handed her the freeze order. She tried to speak, but I turned away and walked out. Later that week, I intercepted her redirected mail at the warehouse I'd set up. Packages she expected for her new venture, branded office supplies, pitch materials, documents, all landed in my hands. One box had her shiny new logo printed across folders. Marrow. How fitting. She was ready to suck the life from everything I'd helped build. But I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was finishing what she started. I returned to the house one last time while she was out. I didn't need anything. I just wanted to see what was left. I moved silently through the rooms, picked up what mattered, left everything else where it would rot in the dust of her schemes. Then I changed the locks. We moved to Sonoma the next week. The kids adapted fast. Kids always do. I set up a small 3D printing workspace in the garage. We painted models together after school, laughed at cartoons they didn't really understand but liked anyway. For the first time in years, it felt like home. And then, on a rainy Thursday, she showed up. She was soaked, frantic, pounding on the door. She tried her old key. It didn't turn. She cried out my name, softly at first, then louder. She begged, pleaded. The alarm I'd installed went off anyway. 2 patrol cars arrived. She argued with the officers until they calmly told her to leave. She didn't know I was watching the entire time. My son curled up on my lap, reading quietly. The next day, I packed her belongings into a single box, the same one she'd once used to bring home brochures for our company. I included the useless key and dropped it off with the private security guard on post. That night, my son handed me a wooden sign he'd painted. The letters were crooked, but the message was clear. Honesty lives here. I nailed it to the door and turned the new locks. The startup gala was her idea. She called it Founders Futures, a slick, well-produced event with stage lights, hors d'oeuvres, a rented venue with tall windows, and champagne that no one truly liked. She'd sent out the invites months ago when her plans were still intact, when she imagined herself shaking hands with investors and smiling for photos beneath a banner that read, Innovation, Partnership, Growth. She never canceled it, probably thought she could salvage something from the ashes, or maybe she believed I'd stay away. But I was already there when she arrived. I didn't take the stage immediately. I waited, watched. She stepped through the doors like nothing was wrong. Her dress perfect, her hair curled, her mask back in place. Some of our old partners waved politely. A few avoided her gaze. Most had already received private notices from my lawyer. Some knew the full story. Some were about to find out. 10 minutes into her welcome speech, I stepped out from the side hallway. The murmur in the room changed instantly. Conversation stalled, forks paused midair. She caught sight of me just as I reached the edge of the stage. Her smile faltered. Her fingers clutched the note cards harder. I didn't need a microphone. The screen behind her flickered to life. My cue. The slideshow ran clean. First, her email threads planning to dissolve the company. Then the flash drive exchange with Davis. Then the bank transfers. Tens of thousands siphoned to a fake wellness brand. Then the fake power of attorney. And finally, her text messages planning the move to Canada. No narration, just the truth, raw and undeniable. Her hand dropped the microphone. The clatter echoed across the room. She backed away slowly, whispering something I didn't care to read from her lips. I stepped forward and turned to the crowd, faces I had once built with, suffered with, dreamed with. You deserve transparency. Tonight was supposed to be about partnership. It still is. Just not the kind she imagined. Then came the lawyer. He emerged from the wings with a court officer, placed a thick envelope in her hands, and quietly said, "Your presence is no longer required in this company." The silence turned to whispers. Investors began stepping away. Some checked their phones. Others walked out. And one by one, the applause began. Not for me, but for what had been revealed. For truth, even when it stung. Kelly stood frozen. The lawyer turned and walked past her. I didn't. I waited. She tried to speak. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. But nothing came. I watched her search the crowd for an ally and find none. Her mask cracked in front of 100 people. She left in tears. That night, I signed the final company transfer papers. With her removed as a partner by court order, I regained full control. I renamed the company under a new banner, stripped it of the colors she'd chosen, rebuilt the branding from the ground up. And the next morning, the team and I posted a message to the company chat. Integrity wins. Moving forward begins today. By then, the house had already been transferred fully into my name. The children's school files were updated. Their mother's name no longer listed as the primary contact. The court filings made it so she'd need special permission just to visit. She tried. She showed up again 3 weeks later. Not at the door this time, but lingering near the edge of the property line, standing beside her car like a shadow that hadn't been invited. She waited nearly an hour, just standing there, staring at the windows. Maybe she expected the kids to come out. Maybe she hoped I'd do what I always used to, go to her, ask what was wrong, listen to the lies. But those days were gone. The security team was already briefed. One of them walked up calmly, handed her a small cardboard box and said, "He asked me to give you this." Inside were the rest of her things: a photo album with missing pages, a printed copy of the home sale in Victoria, canceled, and the key, her old house key, wrapped in a note that simply read, "Not here, not anymore." That was the last time I saw her in person. The days that followed were quiet, focused. My sons adjusted quickly, like they'd known something was broken long before I did. Every evening they ran into the garage and worked on models. They didn't ask questions about their mom, not because they didn't care, but because they felt what replaced her absence was real, whole, safe. We painted castles, starships, old ruins. My youngest asked if we could make a dragon that guarded a fortress from bad guys. I said, "Sure, let's make it breathe fire." He grinned wide, splattering red paint onto his elbow. Our new life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Weeks later, I found a moment alone and stood on the front steps beneath the wooden sign my son had made. The one that read, "Honesty lives here," in crooked letters. It wasn't just a decoration anymore. It was the final word. No rage, no revenge speeches. Just a door that stayed closed behind me, and 2 locks that clicked with quiet satisfaction. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.